I want to welcome all of those who are joining us, whether you're joining from the website or you are joining us from Facebook. Good morning. Thank you for being a part of our devotional this morning. Today we're talking about something called lamenting. Lamenting. Now this may seem like a not fun topic to talk about. In fact, in churches, we're often talking about the fun things, the love, the praise, the worship, the graciousness of God. But we don't often like to talk about lamenting. But this is a very important part of soul care for us as human beings. Lamenting is about bringing a complaint to God and having him answer it. Now, we often think like maybe it's not okay to complain to God, or maybe we think, I don't think it's right to bring these things to God. They're too small. It's not important. God's got bigger things to deal with. But God says, I want all of you. I want the good, the bad, and the ugly. Bring it. I am a big God. I can handle it. So today we're going to talk about just how to do that. And it's really important in this time and in this day and age. As we are undergoing this pandemic right now, there is going to be trauma that happens to us. And I'm not just talking about the physical disease. I'm talking about the soul trauma that happens. When we regularly experience a wound or a hurt or a grief over and over and over, it creates deep wounds in our souls, things that are very traumatic to us. And they leave scars and they leave holes. So we're going to talk today about that and how to handle it. So the first thing I want to talk about is, what is lament? Okay. And in the Psalm, it actually has a bunch of different ones. We call them the Psalms of Lament. We have a whole book in the Bible called Lamentations. All right. And a lament isn't just an unscripted type of complaint. It actually has a form to it. And we're going to talk through it. And I'll post this information for you on our Facebook page underneath this live video for you. But a lament has 6 parts to it. And they don't always have all the parts, but they usually have most of them. And here's what the parts are. There's an address directly to God. It usually sounds something like, "Hear me, O God, hear my prayer and answer quickly." And then they might do a proper lament. And this is the description of what has happened that the people are requesting assistance for. So it might be, "You've abandoned us, O God. You have left us desolate. We are starving and we are hungry, and only you can save us in this hour." Something like that. After that might come a confession of trust. This is kind of like, okay, God, you said you were going to promise us to take care of us and be faithful to us, that you would hear our prayers. And so we believe in that, God. And then the next piece is a petition. This is where they actually make the direct request to God. God, we need you to come in this hour to do X, Y, and Z. And then after that, they might do a statement of certainty. This is where they give their assurance that God is going to take care of them. Hang on one second here. That God is going to take care of them and that he is going to bless them. And the last piece of a lament is a vow of praise. And this is where they give thanks to God because they know that he is going to come through. So there is some laments that we can read, and we're actually going to read one of them right now. We're going to read Psalm 60. Psalm 60. So we'll turn there. And you're going to hear different pieces. I think this one has all of them except for the direct appeal to God in the beginning. So Psalm 60. You have rejected us, O God, and burst forth upon us. You have been angry. Now restore us. You have shaken the land and torn it apart. Mend its fractures, for it is quaking. You have shown your people desperate times, and you have given us wine that makes us stagger. But for those who fear, you have raised a banner to be unfurled against the bow. Save us and help us with your right hand. that those you love may be delivered. God has spoken from his sanctuary. In triumph, I will parcel out Shechem, a measure off the valley of Succoth. Gilead is mine, Manasseh is mine. Ephraim is my helmet, and Judah my scepter. Moab my wash basin. Upon Edom I toss my sandal. Over Philistia I shout in triumph. Who will bring me to the fortified city? Who will lead me to Edom? Is it not you, O God? You who have rejected us and no longer go out with our armies? Give us aid against the enemy, for the help of man is worthless. With God we will gain the victory, and he will trample down our enemies. Did you hear the different pieces of the lament there? They say to God, help us, restore us, for you have left us desolate. They talk about the conditions that are happening. And then they give that exclamation of trust, that proclamation of trust. You have told us that you who raised the banner, it will be unfurled against the bow. And then they begin to talk about what it's like when God will triumph over this and how God's assurance. They give their petition, save us and help us with your right hand, deliver us. And then they end with that vow, with God, we will gain the victory and he will trample down our enemies. So that's one of the examples of a psalm of lament. You might want to look at Psalm 44 or 74, Psalm 79, 80, 85, 90. There's many different psalms of lament. So here's why we're talking about this today. As we are experiencing trauma, as we are experiencing pain and grief, maybe you have lost someone in this season and you haven't been able to gather with friends or family to grieve. Maybe you have lost someone and you haven't been able to see them or talk to them before they passed. Maybe you are a healthcare worker and you are going into work over and over with long shifts where you don't have the gear that you need and you're losing patience and you're experiencing trauma. Whatever it is, no matter what you're experiencing, it's not small, and God sees it all. And so one of the ways we can do self-care, one of the ways that we can process this pain, process our grief, process our sorrow, and what is happening in this day is to write a lament to God. Write a lament to God. What would you say to God? How would you lament to him? Because he wants to hear it. Now, I get that this might feel a little uncomfortable or awkward at first because we're used to bringing the good stuff to God. But God also says, I care about this part of you too. So there's 3 things I want you to do in this time right now. The first thing is I want you to wait and lament. Between now and Sunday, I want you to take this time and I want you to try and write a lament to God. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't have to be in any specific meter. Just write a lament. Take some of those different pieces that I've named and write down what's going on inside of you. Write down what you want God to do, how you want him to intercede. Write down those pieces. You might wonder whether your lamenting might lead to more cynicism or skepticism. But the goal here is to actively wait on God, to write our lament and then wait. When we lament in front of God, we talk to him about the state of our souls and the state of the world. And then waiting requires that we listen to hear God's heart on these same issues. So I want you to wait and lament. And the second thing I want you to do is I want you to wait and look. You know, in this season, sometimes it may feel a bit hopeless. Like we don't understand what God's doing and why he's doing it, or how he's working and how he's moving. Zechariah had the same problem when he and Elizabeth couldn't conceive. He got so fed up with God, he just gave up. He felt hopeless. It took being struck silent by an angelic messenger to wake Zechariah up from his disbelief. Where are you no longer looking for God's hand in your life? Where have you stopped looking? Maybe it's in your own personal life or in your home, in the organization of your home. Maybe it's in relationships with other people. Maybe it's in hope for a future. I want you to be like the child that is eagerly awaiting Christmas. I want you to be eagerly awaiting to talk to God and ask him, have you come yet? Where are you working? Look to the past, see what God's done in your life in the past, and remind yourself that he is at work in the present and in the future. The third thing I want you to do is I want you to wait and love. Now, waiting doesn't mean that we are passive. In fact, we move and act in love even now. Even when it seems like the good that we're doing won't change any of the outcome or have any effect on the greater issue. That act of love, whether it's palliative care, planting a seed, it doesn't matter. This act of loving, it grows out of our laments, that because of the Lord's great love, we are not consumed by our pain and our sorrow. We recognize that our very minuscule capacity to love, to care, or even to call others are just signposts of God's ongoing love, his great love for his people. So as we go through this Holy Week to the end with Christ and we await his resurrection, I want you to bring your pain to God. Bring your pain to the cross this week. I want you to try and write a lament. I want you to give service to what's happening inside of you in your heart right now. I want you to bring it before God and let him begin a process with you of healing and tending to his wonderful creation. I want to thank you for joining me today. I pray that this blessed you, and I look forward to being with you on Sunday at 11 a.m. and tonight at 7 p.m. as we celebrate the table of Christ and the resurrection of Christ. Have a wonderful and a blessed day.